Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the July 9th meeting to order. The time is 1 p.m., right on time. I'd like to start with a few reminders. If you haven't already, please sign in the hallway. Members of the audience that want to make public comments on the agenda should fill out a public comment card and hand that card to CMAP staff in the room. This meeting is being broadcast on Zoom and is being recorded. For those online who want to hear what's going on in the room, please turn your mics on so we make sure that they have full access. And best practice to identify yourselves when making a motion or a second or a comment. For those participating via Zoom, please keep your microphones muted unless you are called upon to speak. When appropriate in the agenda, I will request comments from those online and will recognize you when it's your turn to speak. With that, let's start today with self-introductions. The members at the table. I am Brandon Gaber with IDOT's Bureau of Planning. I will hand it off to Amy here on my right.
Amy Lee, CMAP.
John Paul Diepla, FHWA.
Good afternoon, Drew Duffin, representing the counties.
Christina Bader with Chicago Transit Authority.
Heather Mullins, Regional Transportation Authority.
Chris Skogsbakken with PACE.
Heidi Lichtenberger, representing Council of Mayors.
Buck Doyle with CDOT.
Dustin Clark with Metro.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have anyone online? Okay, I'm told we do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. Moving to agenda item 2.0, agenda changes and announcements. Staff has no agenda changes or announcements today. Does any committee member wish to propose an agenda change or have an announcement to make? All right, hearing none, let's move on to approval of minutes, item 3.0. We have before us the draft minutes of the May 14th meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved. RTA.
Second, CMAP.
So, moved by RTA, second by CMAP. Any discussion? All right, all those in agreement, say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, nay. The motion carries. Moving on to the next item, item 4.0, new business. First item up is item 4.1, the fiscal year 2025 invoice status. This is a discussion item and will be presented by Kama Dobbs. Kama, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Brandon. Actually, this one's just information. The invoice status for FY25 is in your packet. As you can see in that status sheet, we're just about caught up for end of federal fiscal year. So just a thank you to everyone for getting your invoice packets in and looking for those last few stragglers by next Tuesday. So if there's any questions on status, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions or comments for Kama? All right, moving on, item 4.2, fiscal year 2026 contracts. We have Kama here again to walk us through.
All right, so Deepa, who you met at the last meeting from Finance, couldn't be here with us today, but on her behalf, I would like to say something. So the FY26 sub-award contracts have been drafted. Those will be sent out for execution as soon as we have our final funding agreement from IDOT. Brandon let me know earlier that the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration did approve the UWP document, and so that has come back to IDOT. And they are working on the funding agreements with the MPOs. So the federal approval came in on time so that expenses can start being accrued as of last week, July 1. And as soon as we have those agreements out and executed, then we'll be able to start invoicing. So as in past years, the contracts require invoicing at least every quarter and as frequently as every month. So first invoices will come after those contracts are executed.
Thank you, Kama. Any questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, moving on to the next item, 4.3, UWP development methodology. We have before us approval today, the updated methodology for the upcoming fiscal year 2027 development cycle. Kama, I will turn it over to you before we head to a vote.
All right, thank you again. As we discussed at your last meeting, minor adjustments have been made to the competitive methodology to ensure that we're compliant with current federal guidance. Additionally, some text and formatting cleanup was also completed within the document, and the program development schedule in the appendix was updated. So the memo in your packets contained a list of the revisions, the two most significant being the shift from advancing CMAP strategic direction to be aligning with the 2026 RTP emerging priorities, as well as the removal of points for certain state planning documents that aren't so well aligned with current federal priorities. I don't believe there's any need to go through the markup line by line, but I'm happy to if anybody wants to, or to take any questions prior to action.
All right, before we get into discussion or questions, can I get a motion to approve the updated methodology?
So move, CMAP.
Second? Second, Council of Mayors. All right. Any questions or discussion items? All right, seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, all in favor. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.4, the fiscal year 2026 invoice process updates, another discussion item. At the committee's last meeting, staff mentioned anticipated changes to the invoice process for fiscal year 26, which began last week. Staff will continue that discussion today. I'll turn it over to Kama again to kick us off.
All right, thank you again. So at the last meeting, we did give a little teaser on this topic, noting that staff was working on new invoice templates for FY26 in order to improve our transparency and accountability, as well as to make the invoice review process a little bit easier and more efficient. So at your place today is a draft of the template and submission guide. Apologies for not getting that out ahead. We were working on it the last couple of days to finish it up. As we walk through this today, we're kind of looking for your initial reactions and comments and suggestions, with the understanding, of course, that many of you sitting around this table are not the ones responsible for preparing the invoice packets. So, looking for you all to take this back to the folks that do and make sure that there's no major concerns with what's being proposed here before we issue these as official templates. So the intent of the template is to provide a consistent approach to reporting and invoicing, hopefully without being too disruptive to each of your agency's internal processes, as well as eliminating the need for multiple Word documents and multiple spreadsheets to be submitted with each invoice packet. We also have included in these templates places for you to report on the activities completed in each invoice period, eliminating the need to submit separate quarterly status reports. So we'll take the information out of these templates and put that together for our quarterly reports to IDOT. So starting on the next slide, the template is an Excel spreadsheet that consists of 4 parts. The first part is a summary page intended to replace that cover memo that's currently used. Only the highlighted sections, so those 4 things would need to be filled in on this cover sheet, and then the request for reimbursement table will fill in from the other sheets. Right now, there's a signature block on there. We would anticipate that you could either print that, sign it, scan it, and send it back, sign it electronically. We don't necessarily have a preference, so whatever works for each agency. On that next slide, then. Sorry, I totally didn't remember to print my own talking points. So I'm trying to talk off of my computer here. So the first other tab is a sheet to summarize the non-travel expenses. This is used primarily by the councils of mayors. A couple others do have some expense categories. The intent here is to have the expenses listed individually so that they can be quickly verified as eligible and checked against your attached receipts and backup. Each agency can customize or group the categories in the way that makes sense for them, because not everybody charges to the same categories. The ask from us is just to make it easy for us to verify each line against what's attached. So hunting hunting and matching receipts to what's shown in the table. The next tab is intended to be repeatable for each staff person that's included in the grant, and will capture not only their hours worked on each grant activity, but also travel and other expenses all in one tab. The activities and tasks listed should be aligned with the activities and tasks budgeted for each person. It's not necessary for your internal time cards or timekeeping systems to be modified. Instead, the expectation here is that you would just total up the hours and expenses for each sheet to compare to the total reimbursable hours shown on each employee's timesheet. And similarly, that expenses would align with individual expense reports that are attached. So those can all be submitted in the same format that you've been submitting them. These sheets would serve as a means to assign the hours and expenses to the grant activities and tasks, so something that we haven't done in the past. We want to be more transparent about what's going on, what work's being done, and how that aligns with the budget, which is done by task. Also on these sheets is a space for each employee to describe what work they did in the invoice period. For example, they might say, I submitted tip amendments, or I attended a public workshop, or prepared some technical report. These descriptions, along with information provided on the next tab that I'll talk about, will serve as those status reports for the grant. So on that final tab is a sheet for tracking deliverable status. So each of you list deliverables in your budget submittal. That list will be repeated on this tab, and then we'll be looking for folks to just fill in what the status of the deliverables is on the sheet with each submission. So pretty simple and straightforward. Don't want to create extra administrative burden here. Just want to try and simplify everything that we're doing. So any initial gut reactions, questions, or concerns?
Is this just for core or is this also what you use for
It
competitive?
would be used for both.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Drew.
Well, I guess first a question, just for clarity's sake, this will include also PL reimbursement processes.
Yep.
Well, then I appreciate the fact that the operating expenses are pulled out of the particular tasks as we've been doing the past years. It's not always the clearest where each expense should go in which category. So thank you for making that change.
Yeah, for sure. The one exception for the councils in particular is your travel expenses will need to be assigned to a task, and that's how they are in your budget templates. But the operating expenses are all just listed as operating expenses.
Sorry, I have a question. So, looking at this, is it just kind of a synthesized structure of the grant agreement or the grant application,
Yep.
Excel doc, invoice tool thing?
Yep, that's
Okay,
that's
cool.
exactly what's intended. And when we're ready to start sending these out for use in FY26, we'll go ahead and pre-populate what was in your budget submittal so that you don't have to refill out all the lines. We'll copy those over in here for you.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I thought this looked familiar.
Yeah. That was the intent, hopefully the next baby step is to tie the two things together so we can do all the reporting with, a couple button clicks.
Can you say more about how this would be used for the competitive program?
Yeah, so, there's not so much activities and tasks for competitive, so I think you would just need to, list the activity as whatever that planning study is, right?
I think it might be helpful to have like an example
Yeah.
of how
Yeah.
how this format would work for a competitive project.
Yep.
'Cause
we can do that.
I'm struggling a little bit to see
Yeah.
that the
because-
info that we have for those types of projects relates to this.
Yeah, I think for the competitive, honestly, because most of them are consultant contracts, you're gonna have maybe one or two lines and it's, consultant A, consultant B and the cost, not,
Okay.
we do not need to see all of the hour details for the consultants.
And then I'm sorry, could you repeat the idea that we're not doing quarterly reports anymore?
Yeah,
Sorry.
the idea is to capture the status as part of each invoice packet, and then we'll just compose that up with the reports that we put together for IDOT, instead of having to compose a separate quarterly report.
And as a point of clarification, would this be a retroactive to prior year grant agreements for competitive grants?
I would say what makes sense for you guys. You know, again, this is meant to be a template, but if there's some piece of it that doesn't work for your particular agency, let's talk through, you know, how to modify it for your particular agency. I mean, right now there's, you know, 18 open grants and they come in 18 different formats. So if we could get down to, you know, 2 different formats, that'd be great. So just trying to get more uniformity, but not be super prescriptive about the formula or the formatting either.
Thank you. Yeah, this should work for our existing grant agreements. Thank you.
I was under the impression, and maybe this is just for the core program, that these grants were 1 year without extensions. Is that not the case for the competitive?
It is not the case for the competitive. Some of the competitives are multi-year.
Core?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
cores are 1 year.
Sorry, I had another question. So you mentioned before that there was a different level of granularity between, let's say, just for core, right? It came up in the context of competitive, but a different level of granularity for staff opposed to a consultant.
Correct.
Okay, is that going to be kind of clarified, like the expectations between the two, some point written down as a reference?
Yep.
Because if so, that'd be incredibly helpful. You know, just because those are different standards, and we're going to try and do our best to align with yours.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for CDOT in particular, because you do use some consultants as staff on this, probably look for a balance in the middle. Since those staff are working on different tasks that are related to the grant, maybe try and get their totals by the activity and task, but not too granular.
Yeah, sure. And we'll probably arrange a time to hash this out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just 'cause especially in our latest year, it's skewed more heavily towards the consultants. So I just want to make sure that we are capturing it accurately.
Yeah. I mean, the intent here is just, to make it simple for you to be transparent about what you're working on so that we can really quickly say, yep, that's an eligible activity and get payments made as quickly as possible.
Any more questions or comments from the committee? All right, hearing that, we will move on.
Before you step off, Brandon, I want to say one more thing. I just wanted to take a moment. So you all got this handout from a new staff person here. That's Hayden Horton. So Hayden joined our team, the Federal Transportation Funding Team, about 6 weeks ago, and they'll be taking over a lot of the support for this committee, contributing to the development of the next document and helping with invoice reviews. So it was Hayden that put these templates together. So just wanted to welcome them and have you all put a face to the name because you're going to start seeing emails.
Awesome. Welcome, Hayden. Look forward to working with you. All right, moving on to item 5.0. Do any members of the committee wish to provide any updates on UWP funded projects today? So some of you are competitive or other projects going on. Hearing none, certainly we encourage and love to hear about the work that's being done. If you would like to have yourself considered to provide an update at the next meeting, please reach out to CMAP staff. Once again, we just like to hear progress and hear what's going on with this competitive funding. So we'll move on to item 6.0, other business. Do any other members of the committee have other business they'd like to bring? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. Did staff receive any written public comment prior to today's meeting? Okay. Is there any in-person public comment? Okay. Hearing none, are there any requests online? All right, nice and easy. Hearing no comments, we'll move on to item 8.0, next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for September 10th, 2025 at 1 p.m. right here in this room. Item 9.0, adjournment. If there's no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Christina, can you use your?
When are you looking for the feedback on this guide by?
We will try and get it emailed out by Friday in electronic format. Is a week enough or is 2 weeks better?
I think probably 2 weeks.
We can make that work.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Can I get a second?
RTA.
Perfect. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 1:20. Thank you all.